Hey there, you doing okay? My name's Arthur, I'm 78 years old, and I'm gonna tell you a story that's marked my whole life. A story full of love and a whole lot of prejudice. I'll just get right to it so I don't waste your time. It was one of those super hot afternoons, the kind where even the breeze doesn't help, honey. I was in my workshop out back of the house, working on a gate I had to finish by the end of the week. The iron was glowing red in the forge, and I was swinging that big hammer, making that loud noise that echoed all over the yard. Sweat was pouring down my forehead, mixing with the soot from the charcoal. That's when I heard some little footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up and saw a young lady carrying a little boy in her arms. She stopped right in front of my wire fence, and the boy was mesmerized watching the fire in the forge. He was a black kid, about 3 years old, with these bright, smart eyes that sparkled like stars. The lady's name was Naomi. She had light skin, but tan from the sun, and she was wearing a simple cotton dress with flowers on it, the kind everybody wore back then. Her hair was tied back with a scarf, and she had a little bundle of clothes under her arm. You could tell they were simple folks. The boy wouldn't stop pointing at the fire and making these excited little sounds. I stopped hammering the iron on the anvil and walked over to the fence. "Good morning, ma'am," I said, taking off my hat out of respect. She greeted me quietly, kinda shy, and said her son was fascinated with my work. "What's the boy's name?" I asked. And she said, "Caleb." The little rascal grinned at me, showing these tiny white teeth. He was a beautiful child, honey. One of those kids you fall in love with right away. I offered them both a glass of water. Naomi accepted gratefully, and while she was drinking, I noticed her hands were shaking a bit. Caleb climbed down from her arms and stood by the fence, watching every move I made in the shop. That's when I heard her story. She worked as a maid in a big house on the other side of town. Caleb's dad? Well, that's where the real drama was for the poor thing. She told me in a low voice, full of shame, that she'd gotten involved with a traveling salesman. She was only 13 when this good-looking black guy, around 20, came through town selling stuff for a company from the big city. He promised her the world, marriage, a good life. All that sweet talk a no-good man uses to trick an innocent girl. He got her pregnant and vanished. Never came back, never sent a letter. Left Naomi all alone with a growing belly, and her whole family turned their backs on her. Her dad kicked her out, called her a disgrace to the family. Her mom cried a lot but didn't have the guts to stand up to her husband. Naomi had to fend for herself. She found the maid job, got a little room in the back of the house where she worked, and raised Caleb the best she could. The boy grew up without ever knowing his dad, not even his full name. While she talked, I watched how loving she was with her son. Even though she was young, she was a devoted mom. And Caleb, even as a little kid, was already polite, obedient, and affectionate with his mama. Something stirred in my heart that day, honey. Maybe it was the longing to have a family, to take care of somebody, or maybe it was just the sweet way that boy looked at me like I was a hero just for working with iron and fire. When they left, I kept thinking about that moment. The sound of my hammer on the iron wasn't the same anymore. Felt like something had changed inside me. That night, lying in my bachelor bed, all I could think about was Naomi and little Caleb. In the days that followed, they started passing by my house all the time. Caleb got used to me real quick. I'd drop everything to talk to them. The boy already knew my name, would yell "Mr. Arthur" from far away and come running to the fence. His mom always apologized for the bother, but I told her it was the opposite. Their visits were the best part of my day. One afternoon, Naomi showed up earlier than usual. She looked worried, and Caleb was quieter. She was holding a bundle. She sat in the shade of the mango tree out front and let out a deep sigh. I asked what happened, and she told me her boss was moving to another city, she'd be out of a job, out of a home, everything. "And now, Mr. Arthur? I don't know where to go with my son," she said, her voice breaking. Caleb, even though he was little, seemed to understand his mom's worry. He stayed glued to her, patting her face with his tiny hand to comfort her. That's when I made the most important decision of my life, honey. Didn't think twice, it came straight from the heart. Naomi, marry me. I'll take care of you and Caleb. She looked up at me, shocked. But Mr. Arthur, you barely know me. And I have a son. I know enough to see you're an honest, hard-working woman. And Caleb? I looked at the boy playing with some sticks on the ground. That boy is gonna be my son too. I'll raise him like he's my own blood. Naomi was quiet for a long time. You could see the thoughts racing through her head. Suddenly, she stood up and picked Caleb up. Mr. Arthur, I have to be honest with you. Thank you for the offer, but I can't. I don't love you the way a woman should love her husband. I'm still hurt from what happened with Caleb's dad. I answered with the same honesty. Naomi, I don't know if what I feel is love either. I know I want to take care of you too, give you protection, give this boy a family. Love, if it's meant to be, will come slow, growing day by day. But then she said something that chilled me to the bone. What if Caleb's dad comes back? What if he shows up wanting his son? Fear hit me hard, but I didn't let it show. If he shows up, we'll talk. But a man who abandons a pregnant woman has no right to come back demanding anything. Caleb needs a dad who stays, who takes care, who teaches him to be a good man. She thought a bit more, looking at her son. Would you let us stay here a few days without getting married? So I can find work, and then we'll see. Of course, you can stay as long as you need. I promised her. She was smart, she didn't want to marry without really knowing the person. Naomi sighed and nodded slowly. I could see in her eyes she was seriously thinking about my proposal, but she was a prudent woman. Showed she had good sense, unlike me. I promised they could stay as long as needed, that I wouldn't change my mind. I grabbed their bundle of clothes and took them to the room inside the house. It was a room I'd been using as storage since my mom passed, full of old boxes, tools I didn't use anymore, old clothes hanging on a makeshift line. When I opened the door, even I was shocked at the mess. Sorry, I said awkwardly, explaining I didn't get visitors, so I'd let it go. Naomi looked around and, instead of complaining, rolled up her sleeves and said it was just a matter of organizing, asked if she could clean. We spent the rest of the afternoon fixing up that room. I took out all the junk that had piled up. She swept, wiped the floor, cleaned the windows. Caleb stayed in the middle of us, trying to help in his own way, carrying little things from one side to the other, always wanting to feel useful. When we finished, the room looked brand new, clean, airy, with a single bed and a little bed we improvised with some boards and an old mattress. Naomi looked around, satisfied, saying it was way better than she expected, even bigger than the room they had before. When she said that, I saw her eyes light up with hope. She must have lived in really cramped, simple places. That room, even though it was modest, meant more comfort for her and the boy. That night, after we ate a simple soup she made with what I had in the kitchen, we sat on the front porch talking. Caleb was dozing in his mom's lap, tired from the day's excitement. That's when she asked why I lived alone, never married. The question hit me hard because it touched an open wound. I told her I'd never married, that until recently I hadn't even thought about it. When she asked about family, I said I didn't have anyone left, that I'd lost everyone. She could tell it was a tough subject and didn't push, but I felt like talking. Maybe it was the first time in years I had someone to really open up to. I told her she probably thought I was crazy, offering marriage to someone I barely knew, and that I'd tell her a bit about my story so she'd understand. She even put Caleb to bed, got comfortable in her chair, and listened closely while I started opening my heart. I explained that I was 22, that I'd lost my mom about 7 months earlier. I told her how she got sick, pneumonia, she wasted away slowly, died in my arms on a cold winter night. I saw Naomi cross herself and whisper a little prayer when I told her about my mom's recent death, but I explained the story. Started way before that. My dad, John, was a blacksmith just like me. Taught me everything I know about working iron. It was in the family, his grandpa taught his dad. He was a good man, hard-working, respected in town. My mom, Mrs. Antonia, took care of the house and us kids. I had a younger brother, Andrew, who was 5. We were a simple but happy family. I paused because the memories still hurt. Naomi waited patiently for me to continue. I told her that 4 years earlier, that cursed disease hit our town, tuberculosis. Nobody really knew how you caught it or how to cure it. They just knew it killed a lot, especially poor folks who couldn't afford proper treatment. I explained how my dad was the first to get it. Started with coughing, then fever, night sweats, that endless weight loss. We took him to the only doctor in town, but he said there wasn't much to do. It was just a matter of time. My voice started cracking when I got to the hardest part. I told her how the damn disease spread through the whole house. I got it, my mom got it, my little brother Andrew got it too. It was hell on earth watching everyone waste away at the same time. Naomi held my hand in a gesture of care and understanding when I said that me and my mom somehow pulled through. We didn't know how, maybe we were stronger, maybe divine luck. But my dad and Andrew died a week apart. I explained that Dad went first, on a Sunday morning after 3 months of suffering. He was a strong, hard-working man, and the disease ate him up completely. When he died, he didn't even weigh half what he used to. I stopped to breathe because the memories came flooding in like a wave. By then, I was already crying. I told her about Andrew, my little brother, who lasted another week. He was just a kid, 5 years old. Didn't really understand what was happening, why he felt bad, why Daddy was gone. He died calling for Mom, asking for water with that fever that never broke. I saw Naomi crying too. I told her we buried them both in the town cemetery, in a plot we got with neighbors' help. 2 simple wooden crosses side by side. Me and my mom were left alone in a house that suddenly felt huge, empty, lifeless. When she asked how we moved forward, I explained that at first it was really hard. The house was full of memories. Every corner reminded us of Dad or Andrew. But my mom was a strong woman, full of faith. She'd say God took them because he needed angels in heaven and we had to keep living for them. I got up and walked to the fence, looking at the workshop where I worked every day. I told her how I took over Dad's blacksmith business. I was young, inexperienced, but I'd learned the trade from him since I was little. At first, it was tough getting clients, everyone was used to Dad's work. But little by little, I earned people's trust. I explained that my mom tried to keep going, taking care of the house, doing some sewing to help with income, trying to keep the family together even though it was just us two. But I noticed she never fully recovered from losing her husband and youngest son. I saw the compassion in Naomi's eyes when I told her that last year my mom started getting sick. First it was just more tiredness, then chest pain, shortness of breath. I explained that since then I'd been living alone in that house. Worked all day, came home at night, ate whatever, slept, and the next day it was the same. No family left, no close relatives, no real friends, nobody who cared if I lived or died. I was just the town blacksmith. I told her that's why I'd offered marriage so suddenly. It wasn't crazy, it was necessity. Need to have a family again, someone to care for, someone who cared about me. And when I saw the 2 of them on the street, needing help, I thought maybe it was the chance God was giving me to start over. Naomi told me softly that I was a good man, that any woman would be lucky to have a husband like me. But she also said that, from what I told her, I'd probably offer marriage to any girl in need. And that's why she didn't want to marry me, not for those reasons. I was disappointed. But what could I say when everything she said was true? That night when I went to bed, I felt a difference in the house. It wasn't empty anymore, wasn't silent anymore, there were voices, life, movement. It was like the house had started breathing again after months suffocating in loneliness. In the following days, Naomi and Caleb settled into the house routine. She took care of cleaning, cooking, laundry, with that special care only a family woman has. The boy played in the yard, explored every corner, got used to the new life. And I rediscovered what it was like to come home to someone waiting, to have dinner conversation, to have company in lonely moments. It was like life made sense again after wandering aimlessly for so long. During that week of living together, I noticed how careful Naomi was with everything, how she treated my house with respect, how she raised Caleb with firmness but without cruelty. Also how the boy was smart, curious, well-behaved, he didn't cause trouble, obeyed his mom, showed gratitude for any kindness. Less than a week after they arrived, Naomi came to talk to me in the workshop. She said she'd leave the boy with a lady she used to leave him with while she worked, and she'd go out looking for a job. In the days that followed, the news spread through town like wildfire. Arthur took up with that girl who has a black kid, some said. Poor guy must be desperate to accept something like that, others commented. But I didn't care about the gossip. I'd made my decision to help them and I'd see it through. The amazing part is that before, nobody noticed me, but one different choice and suddenly I was the talk of the town. I shrugged it off. Naomi got a job at the general store, cleaning, and the boy stayed with that lady named Doris. We were getting to know each other better, talking about life, plans for the future. She was a simple woman but smart, full of dreams tucked away in her heart. Caleb had completely gotten used to me. He was a curious kid, smart, full of life. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Naomi came to talk to me in the workshop. I was finishing a gate for Mr. Sebastian's house, focused on the work. Caleb was with Mrs. Doris, so she was alone, with that shy way she got when she wanted to talk about something serious. Arthur, she said, stopping at the shop entrance. Now she called me that, at my request. Can I interrupt for a minute? I put down the hammer on the bench and turned to her. She had a different look, determined but nervous. Sure, Naomi, what's up? She took a deep breath, adjusted her apron she always wore for work, and said it all at once, I want to marry you. I gotta admit, honey, I was shocked. I'd expected a lot of things, but not that. She'd been the one to say she couldn't marry without loving a man the way a wife should. And now she was proposing to me out of the blue. Naomi, I said slowly, are you sure about this? I know what I said 2 months ago. She interrupted me, and I could tell she was dead serious. But things have changed, Arthur. People won't stop talking. Wherever I go, women whisper. At the store, men make little jokes when they think I'm not listening. And the worst are the comments about Caleb. Anger boiled up in me when she said that. What kind of comments? They say he'll grow up without morals, that he's being raised in a house of people living in sin, that I'm a loose woman corrupting a good man. Her voice trembled a bit, but she stayed strong. Yesterday Mrs. Francis even said to my face that an honest woman doesn't live in a single man's house without being married. She's right, Arthur. I took off my soot-covered apron and walked over to her. And you're asking me to marry you because of these vicious tongues? It's not just that. She answered, looking straight into my eyes. It's that I've realized something living here. You're a good man, hardworking, honest. You treat Caleb like he's your own. You treat me with respect. And me? She hesitated a little. I've learned to enjoy your company. It might not be the dreamy love of a young girl, but it's real admiration, affection. And if Caleb's dad shows up? If he shows up, he'll have to talk to my husband, she said with a firmness I didn't expect. I looked at her, seeing the strong woman she'd become. All right then, I said, feeling joy growing in my chest. We'll get married? She smiled, and it was the first time I saw a full smile on her face since we met. She came over and gave me a tight hug, the kind that gives you chills all over. That same afternoon, we went to Father James's house to arrange the details. He was an old man, kinda deaf, who'd known every family in town for decades. When I told him I wanted to marry Naomi, he adjusted his glasses and asked if I was sure what I was doing. Father, I said sincerely, I'm sure this woman and this boy are the family God sent me. He looked at us for a long time, like he was weighing our souls. Then he nodded and said he could do the wedding, but we'd have to wait for the banns to be read for 3 Sundays in a row, as tradition required. And one more thing, he said, looking especially at Naomi. There's gonna be people who won't like this, people who'll talk. You ready for that? We are, Father, Naomi answered before I could even speak. They're already talking anyway. We left Father James's house with the wedding set for the Saturday after the 3rd Sunday. That gave us a little over a month to prepare, you know? I'd saved up a good bit, living alone, working every day. Never drank, never gambled with the guys, didn't smoke. Every extra penny went into an old tin under my bed. When I counted the money in front of Naomi, her eyes got wide. Good Lord, Arthur, I've never seen so much money. We decided to have a small party just for close neighbors and some loyal customers. Naomi wanted a new dress, and I insisted it be the prettiest we could get in town. We went to Mrs. Matilda's shop. She sold fabrics and did custom sewing. Mrs. Matilda was a skinny lady with a long nose, always watching everybody else's business. When we walked in, she greeted us with a forced smile, the kind you know is just politeness. So it's true you're getting married? She asked while showing fabrics. Yes ma'am, it is, I answered firmly. And we want the best dress you can make. She picked a light blue fabric, beautiful, that brought out Naomi's eyes. But while taking measurements, she kept making sly comments. That's very brave of you, Mr. Arthur, she'd say while wrapping the tape measure. Not every man would have the courage to take on, how should I say, this situation. Naomi turned red with embarrassment, but I wasn't having it. Mrs. Matilda, my situation is that of a man who found a family. If you have a problem with that, we can take our money elsewhere. She shut up right then and finished the job without another word, but you could see on her face she was gonna spread gossip the second she left. On the following Sundays, when Father James read our banns at Mass, you could feel the whispering in church. Women gossiped among themselves, men made disapproving faces, but some folks came up after Mass to congratulate us and wish us well. Mr. John from the bakery, who'd always been my friend, pulled me aside after the second reading and said, Arthur, you sure about this? Isn't it a bit rushed? I know some nice girls I could introduce you to from good families. John, I answered, this woman and this boy have given me more joy in 2 months than I'd had in years. I'm sure. He shook his head, kinda worried, but gave me a pat on the shoulder. Then God bless you. You've always been a man of good judgment. You know, honey, what was really going on was pure prejudice against the black boy. Not so much because Naomi was a single mom. Caleb was thrilled about the wedding. He was only 3, but he understood we were becoming a real family. He called me Daddy Arthur and was beside himself when he found out he'd get new clothes for the party. A week before the wedding, Naomi made a confession that really got to me. We were sitting on the porch after dinner. Arthur, she said softly, I need to tell you something. At first, when I came to live here, I thought you were like other men I'd known. I figured you'd want something in return for the help. I stopped rocking in my chair and looked at her. And now? Now I know you're different. You're truly an honorable man. And I want you to know I'm not marrying just out of need. I'm marrying because I've learned to admire you, to trust you. She held my hand. And because I want to be your wife for real, not just for convenience. In those 2 months living together, I'd fallen in love with Naomi without even realizing it, her loving way with her son, her dedication to the house, her strength in tough times. Naomi, I said, holding her hand, I've learned to love you too, deeply. It's not just wanting a family anymore, it's real love. That day, we kissed for the first time. Man, what a kiss! Her mouth was so soft and warm. It was my first real kiss. Well, when I was 16 I kissed a neighbor girl named Dorothy once, but it was awkward and I didn't feel anything. But with Naomi? I got that nice tingly feeling all over. I liked it so much I started running my hands over her body. But she said we should wait till the wedding. Look, for me, I would have done everything right then and there. On our wedding Saturday, I woke up early, nervous as heck. Took a good bath, put on the new suit I'd had made, and went to wait for Naomi at the church. The church was packed, more people than I expected. But when Naomi walked in wearing that blue dress, holding Caleb's hand, he looked like a little prince. I forgot about everyone else. Father James did a beautiful ceremony. Talked about love, family, the challenges we'd face. When it came time for vows, my voice came out strong. I take Naomi as my wife and Caleb as my son. I didn't have to say that, but I wanted everyone to hear it. When the father said, "You may kiss the bride," I gave her a respectful kiss in front of everyone, like good manners required. But the look we shared promised a happiness way beyond that ceremony. The party was simple, in my own backyard. We hired a photographer and took lots of pictures, about 30 guests total. Caleb ran around in his new clothes, getting congratulations and cheek pinches from the ladies. That's when Mrs. Doris came up with an unexpected offer. That widow lady who watched Caleb while Naomi worked offered to keep the boy so we could have our honeymoon. She'd raised 5 kids and understood how important it was for a couple to start married life right, without worries. Naomi hesitated at first, that natural mom worry about being away from her kid even for a day. But Mrs. Doris was trustworthy, and Caleb loved her. So we accepted the kindness. After the party, we got everything ready and caught a taxi. We couldn't afford far places, but I knew a little village about 20 miles away called Clear Waters, with simple inns and a pretty river, quiet place where nobody knew us, perfect for our honeymoon. The taxi took us to the train station. We caught the train at night. Naomi had never been on a train and was enchanted watching the scenery go by. I'd been once with my mom to visit her sister, my Aunt Judith. And speaking of mom, on that train, I missed her so much. Naomi noticed my sudden sadness and hugged me. We arrived in the middle of the night to a really pretty place, surrounded by green hills, with the river running through town. We found Mrs. Sebastian's inn. She was a nice lady who welcomed us warmly. The room was small but comfortable, with a window overlooking the river, a double bed, simple wardrobe, little table with a wash basin and pitcher. Modest, but perfect for us. That first night as husband and wife, we discovered a tenderness in each other neither of us knew we had. Naomi was gentle but passionate. I was inexperienced but affectionate. We learned together, slowly, with patience and love. It was different from anything I'd imagined. Not just physical, it was complete intimacy, surrender, trust. When we fell asleep holding each other, I knew I'd found not just a wife, but the woman of my life. We spent the first day exploring, walking along the river hand in hand. Naomi took off her shoes and dipped her feet in the water, laughing like a girl. I'd never seen her so free, so happy. She confessed that since Caleb was born, she'd always had worries: work, money, where to live, how to raise him. She'd never just stopped to be happy. The next days were the happiest I'd ever lived. Just 2 full days. We'd wake up late, have breakfast at the inn, explore the area. There was a small waterfall about a mile away where we'd picnic. And in the water, when nobody was around, we'd make love right there. Naomi was so beautiful, her body, her long light brown hair, her soft silky skin. We talked about everything: dreams, fears, future plans. She told me about her childhood, how she dreamed of owning a house with a garden full of flowers. I talked about expanding the workshop, maybe teaching the trade to Caleb when he grew up. When she asked if I thought he'd like working with iron, I said if he liked it, I'd teach him. If not, he'd choose whatever he wanted. The important thing was giving him a chance to study, to make something of himself. I explained that I'd had the chance to study but didn't want to. I wanted to stay close to family. I was really attached to them all. She was shocked when I mentioned studying. Because of his color, a black boy didn't have much chance back then, but I promised that in my house he would. Caleb was my son now, and my son would have every opportunity one could give him. I saw her eyes fill with tears of gratitude and emotion. In that moment, I understood I'd not only married a woman, I'd taken on a responsibility way bigger than I'd imagined. On our last day, we stayed in the room longer, talking, making plans, enjoying the intimacy we discovered. We weren't in a hurry, no worries, just us in our own little world. She confessed she was afraid the happiness would end when we got home, that everything would turn into duty. I promised it wouldn't, that what we'd built was solid. Right then, she said for the first time that she loved me, and I said it back. When we got back to our town, the first thing was picking up Caleb from Mrs. Doris's. The boy came running when he saw us, threw himself into his mom's arms, then hugged me too, saying he missed us. Mrs. Doris said he'd been perfect, no trouble, even helped in the kitchen and yard. And that's how the happiest part of my life began. But between you and me, there was one thing that bothered me. It wasn't just other people's prejudice, no. It was a secret fear growing inside me. A fear I never told anyone. I was terrified that Caleb's real dad would come back. Every time I saw a strange black man in town, my heart raced. What if it was him? What if he came claiming his son? What if Naomi still had feelings for the traveling salesman? After all, he was her first love, even if he did her wrong. At night, when she was asleep, I'd stay awake thinking about it. I'd imagine scenarios, the man showing up at my door, handsome, well-dressed, full of charm. I'd picture Naomi remembering the old love, taking Caleb and leaving with him. That fear ate me up inside, but I never said anything. A man couldn't show weakness, couldn't show jealousy or insecurity. So I swallowed it and kept going. Less than a year married, Naomi got pregnant. When she told me, sitting on the porch after dinner, I felt a joy that wouldn't fit in my chest. It was like life had given me a gift I didn't even know I deserved. I gotta admit, I could hardly believe I'd have a baby that was really mine, blood of my blood, fruit of our love. I treated my wife like a queen those 9 months. I made her quit the store for good. I thought it was dangerous for the baby. Naomi resisted at first. Said she wanted to help with expenses, felt useless just keeping house. But I insisted, promising my work could support the whole family. I could see it was her pride, that need to feel useful, to contribute, but right then the most important thing was taking good care of the pregnancy. During those months, I watched my wife bloom, the belly growing slowly, the morning sickness she handled with patience, that special glow pregnant women have. Caleb was excited about having a little brother or sister, always talking to mom's belly, rubbing it. I worked even harder in the shop. Every hammer strike was for the future of our growing family. I built a crib with my own hands. Put my heart into every detail, sanded it smooth so no splinters. Naomi got emotional when she saw the finished crib, all white, ran her hand over the smooth wood and said she'd never imagined her child sleeping in a crib made by his own dad. When labor came, we called the town midwife, Mrs. Francis, an experienced lady who'd delivered hundreds of babies. I was nervous as hell, pacing from the yard to the house. Little Caleb, almost 5, followed my every step. When I heard the first cry, my legs almost gave out. Mrs. Francis came out with a bundle in her arms and said we had a beautiful, healthy girl. I looked at that tiny creature and felt a love I didn't know existed. It was different from the love I felt for Caleb, who'd come into my life already formed. This was my daughter, so small and helpless. We named her Alice. She was white as snow, with brown eyes just like mine. When she grabbed my big calloused finger with those tiny fingers and long nails, I promised I'd protect that girl from all the evil in the world. Naomi was tired but radiant, looking at our daughter with that overflowing mother love. Caleb was enchanted with his little sister, always wanted to help take care of her, asked Mom to let him give her a bath, rock her to sleep. He showed no jealousy, on the contrary, seemed proud to be the big brother. Life at home was perfect. Naomi devoted herself completely to the home, caring for both kids with patience and love that amazed me every day. I'd come home from work to a house that smelled good, dinner ready, kids clean and happy. It was exactly the family I'd always dreamed of. 2 years later, Naomi got pregnant again. This time I was more prepared, more confident. I knew she was strong, could take care of herself during pregnancy. Alice was too, a smart little girl full of life, running after Caleb in the yard and already saying some words. When the second baby came, another complete joy of a boy, white, with light eyes like his mom, named Logan. Now we were 5. Me, Naomi, Caleb, Alice, and little Logan. The house was always full of noise, laughter, life. Inside the house we were a family like any other. Caleb played with his siblings, helped with chores, obeyed his parents. Naomi treated him exactly the same as the others. No difference at all. I always made it clear he was my son, just like Alice and Logan. At the dinner table, everyone ate the same food. At bedtime, everyone got the same affection. In play, no distinction. But outside was different. Even after years, even with the town used to our family, there were still looks, comments, whispers. When we walked by, people didn't understand how a black boy could be part of a white family. Some even praised my charity, like I was doing a favor raising Caleb. That irritated me deeply, but I swallowed the anger and moved on. The real trouble started when Caleb went to school. At first, when the kids were really little, they didn't care about differences. Played together without thinking about skin color or family background. Caleb got along great with classmates. He was a smart, outgoing kid who made friends fast. But as they got, followed my every step. When I heard the first cry, my legs almost gave out. Mrs. Francis came out with a bundle in her arms and said we had a beautiful, healthy girl. I looked at that tiny creature and felt a love I didn't know existed. It was different from the love I felt for Caleb, who'd come into my life already formed. This was my daughter, so small and helpless. We named her Alice. She was white as snow, with brown eyes just like mine. When she grabbed my big calloused finger with those tiny fingers and long nails, I promised I'd protect that girl from all the evil in the world. Naomi was tired but radiant, looking at our daughter with that overflowing mother love. Caleb was enchanted with his little sister, always wanted to help take care of her, asked Mom to let him give her a bath, rock her to sleep. He showed no jealousy, on the contrary, seemed proud to be the big brother. Life at home was perfect. Naomi devoted herself completely to the home, caring for both kids with patience and love that amazed me every day. I'd come home from work to a house that smelled good, dinner ready, kids clean and happy. It was exactly the family I'd always dreamed of. 2 years later, Naomi got pregnant again. This time I was more prepared, more confident. I knew she was strong, could take care of herself during pregnancy. Alice was too, a smart little girl full of life, running after Caleb in the yard and already saying some words. When the second baby came, another complete joy of a boy, white, with light eyes like his mom, named Logan. Now we were 5. Me, Naomi, Caleb, Alice, and little Logan. The house was always full of noise, laughter, life. Inside the house we were a family like any other. Caleb played with his siblings, helped with chores, obeyed his parents. Naomi treated him exactly the same as the others. No difference at all. I always made it clear he was my son, just like Alice and Logan. At the dinner table, everyone ate the same food. At bedtime, everyone got the same affection. In play, no distinction. But outside was different. Even after years, even with the town used to our family, there were still looks, comments, whispers. When we walked by, people didn't understand how a black boy could be part of a white family. Some even praised my charity, like I was doing a favor raising Caleb. That irritated me deeply, but I swallowed the anger and moved on. The real trouble started when Caleb went to school. At first, when the kids were really little, they didn't care about differences. Played together without thinking about skin color or family background. Caleb got along great with classmates. He was a smart, outgoing kid who made friends fast. But as they got older, things changed. In our town school, he and one other boy were the only black kids among all the white children. And that's when the problems started that broke my heart just thinking about them. The other kids started asking why he had white siblings. Why his mom had blue eyes, why his parents were white. With that natural cruelty kids have without understanding the harm, they started saying he was adopted, that he wasn't a real son, that he'd been abandoned by his real parents. Caleb would come home quiet, thoughtful, with those sad eyes that tore my heart apart. Sometimes he'd come home angry, even saying bad words. He was a smart boy, you know? We told him the truth from the start, that his biological dad was someone else, a black man who left. I remember the day he really understood what that meant. He asked if he could keep calling me dad. Of course I said yes. Told him he was my son, same as the others. But the kids at school didn't stop. Made up stories. Said he'd been found on the street, that we were kind for taking in an abandoned boy. Some even repeated nasty things they heard at home, mean comments about our family. I could see how it affected the boy. He started getting more withdrawn, avoiding going out on weekends. Didn't want to go to mass. When I'd ask how school was, he'd always say fine, but I could see in his eyes it wasn't. The teacher, Mrs. Isabel, was a good woman who tried to keep order, but she couldn't control all the mean comments and teasing in the playground, hallways, at dismissal. She even called me in once to talk. Said Caleb was an excellent student, smart and hard-working, but she'd noticed he was quieter, more isolated. The worst part was I didn't know how to help. I talked to him, explained those kids were wrong, that skin color didn't mean anything, that it didn't matter if he was my blood son, nothing would change the love we had. Naomi suffered as much as I did. Saw her son closing up, losing that natural joy he'd always had. She tried to make up for it at home, gave him extra love, attention, made his favorite foods. There was one time he came home with his uniform dirty, a scratch on his face. When I asked what happened, he said he fell playing, but I suspected it wasn't true. Probably some kid pushed him or fought because of those mean comments. That's when I started thinking maybe I should pull him out of school, teach him at home. But Naomi convinced me that would be worse, he needed to learn to live in the world, no matter how hard. She was right, but it hurt seeing my son suffer like that. The years went by. Caleb helped me a lot in the workshop. He had a knack for it, strong kid. When our youngest was 6, Naomi got pregnant again. We were all happy. The pregnancy months were full of excitement. Naomi looked beautiful with that pregnant glow. I worked double to save money for the expenses. We didn't even have the old crib anymore, had given it away long ago. I'd have to make a whole new layette. I built another crib, this one iron, fancy with lots of pretty details. Gonna be the strongest crib in town, I joke with Naomi. She'd laugh, rubbing her growing belly. But in the 6th month, Naomi started feeling bad. First just more tired, then belly pains. I called the midwife in a panic. Arthur, she said after examining my wife, Naomi needs complete bed rest. The pregnancy is complicated. I did everything I could. Put Naomi in our bed. Wouldn't let her do any housework. But on a cold July night, Naomi woke up screaming in pain. It was different, stronger, more desperate. I ran for Mrs. Francis, who came rushing. What happened that night, honey, was one of the hardest things I've ever lived through. Naomi suffered so much. I thought she was gonna die. She lost the baby. Lost our boy. It was another boy. We had to bury him. Man, what a terrible situation. Only those who've been through it know the awful pain. Naomi stayed in bed for days, crying, not talking to anyone. I didn't know what to do, how to comfort her, how to take care of everyone. The kids stayed by Mom's bed, comforting her, bringing whatever she needed. That's when the mean comments started again in town, worse than ever. Some said it was God's punishment for our mixed family. Others said it was a sign it wasn't meant to be, that God didn't approve. One afternoon, our neighbor Mr. Bennett came looking for me in the workshop. I thought he was coming to offer comfort, but no. Arthur, he said, I don't want to seem insensitive, but don't you think this is a sign? A sign you're on the wrong path. Marrying a girl who already had a kid, and a black one at that? Maybe God is showing you this isn't right. Rage boiled up like a volcano. I dropped the hammer and turned to him with clenched fists. Mr. Bennett, you're treading on dangerous ground. My family is suffering and you come here talking nonsense. Calm down, son. I'm just trying to open your eyes. As long as you keep this up, things won't go right in your life. I couldn't take it anymore. I punched him in the face so hard my hand hurt bad. I'd never hit anyone, but I regretted it right after. The man was old and fell unconscious. I didn't know what to do. I'd really messed up. I tried to sit him up and splashed water on his face. Thank God he woke up quick, but when he came to, he started cursing me, saying I was a dangerous man, and left yelling. Caleb heard and came running. I told him everything, and he asked if we could leave forever, go somewhere people would accept us. I didn't want to, I grew up there. It was my family's house. But he planted that seed in my head, and it kept growing day and night. After that fight with Mr. Bennett, honey, things became unbearable in town. The story spread like wildfire. Some said I was a violent coward, others said the old man deserved it for running his mouth. But the truth is our life turned into a hell of gossip and dirty looks. I decided to talk to Naomi. Asked if this was really what she wanted, to pack up and leave everything. She thought about it. Then said yes, that there we'd never have peace, someone would always be reminding us, always a gossip spreading trash, that our kids deserved to grow up in peace, even knowing Caleb's color wouldn't change and prejudice would probably follow us anywhere. We were willing to try something new, something better. We put the house up for sale in early September. Honey, it was hard making that decision, you know? That house held my whole family's history. Every corner had a memory. Every mark on the wall told a story. There my dad taught me blacksmithing. There my mom cooked so many times. There my little brother Andrew took his first steps. And now my kids had grown up there too, but we had to. Naomi was still recovering from losing the baby, and the looks on the street, the whispers, all that was bad for her. And Caleb, poor kid, was getting quieter every day. At 12, the boy already understood everything around him. He saw the prejudice, felt the different treatment. The house was on the market for 2 months. 2 long months with people coming and going, looking at rooms, asking questions. Some came just out of curiosity, but I showed the property. At the end of October, a real buyer showed up. A merchant from out of town, Mr. Anthony, moving to our town to open a fabric store. Serious man, paid a fair price for the house and workshop. It hurt signing those papers, honey. It was like signing away an era. What hurt most was this tight feeling in my chest, like I was erasing my parents for good. When word got out we were leaving, very few came to say goodbye. You could count them on one hand. Mr. John from the bakery, always my friend and Dad's friend, shook my hand and wished us luck. Mrs. Matilda, even with her sharp tongue, showed up to hug Naomi. Father James came to bless the trip. But the hardest goodbye was with Mrs. Doris. That lady had been like a grandma to the kids, especially Caleb. When we went to her house to say we were leaving, she broke down crying. Cried so hard, poor thing, I got emotional too. You're my family, she said between sobs, hugging Caleb tight. This boy is like a grandson to me. Caleb cried, hugging her too. Even at 12, he was still a kid in many ways. Alice and Logan were sad too, but too young to fully understand what leaving forever meant. Mrs. Doris insisted on making a farewell lunch. Made all the kids' favorites, roast chicken, seasoned rice, thick bean stew with bay leaf. You know a silly thing I remember? That day, Caleb and Alice kept joking and laughing that they were gonna eat bean stew with laurel leaf. And little Logan took the joke seriously and cried mad. Even today, honey, when I eat that bean stew, I remember it, can't help it, it just comes to mind, but I love that memory, does me good. Promise you'll write? LL right? Mrs. Doris said as we were leaving. I promise, Mrs. Doris, Naomi assured her. You've been a blessing in our lives. We decided to move to a bigger city about 120 miles away. It was a growing city with more job opportunities, more schools, more outsiders. I thought in a place like that it'd be easier to blend in, live our life without so much judgment. The move was on a Tuesday in November. We rented a truck for our furniture and belongings. Wasn't much, but it was all we had. Not everyone fit in the cab with the driver, so just I went. They took the train, we'd meet there. When we arrived in Springfield, the first impression was shock. It was a much bigger city than ours, with wide streets, big houses, busy stores. Even had electric streetcars, imagine that. The kids were wide-eyed seeing all the activity. We'd rented a simple house in a working-class neighborhood near downtown. Wasn't as big as the one we sold, but enough for us. Had 3 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a yard where I could set up my new workshop. We didn't want to buy right away. Wanted to get to know the place, see if it was really for us. The first months were tough, I won't lie. Had to start from zero, win new customers, prove my work. But Springfield was growing fast, lots of construction, lots of demand for ironwork. Soon I started getting jobs at gates, fences, iron structures for new buildings. The best part was seeing the kids in the new school. In Springfield there was more diversity, more outsiders, more mixed families. Caleb wasn't the only black kid in school, there were others, kids of railroad workers, factory workers, folks who'd moved for jobs as the city grew. At first, he was wary, afraid of the same prejudice. But little by little he opened up, made friends. There was a boy named Joseph, son of a railroad worker from the South, who became his best friend. The two were inseparable, studied together, played ball together, did everything together. Naomi got better too. The sadness from losing the baby faded slowly. In Springfield, she found other women in the same boat, other families who'd moved from elsewhere looking for a better life. She made friends, started smiling more, became that strong woman I met again. Of course, prejudice didn't disappear completely, honey. It never does, sadly. There were still people who gave us dirty looks, made comments, but it was different. In Springfield, we were just one more family among many different families. We weren't the center of attention, weren't the town's oddity. And you know what? We weren't gonna keep moving our whole lives because of ignorant people. If prejudice was everywhere, at least let it be in a place with more opportunities, better chances to get ahead. We ended up deciding to stay for good. It was good for everyone. I worked like a dog in that workshop. Woke up before sunrise, worked till late at night. Iron was my companion, hammer my tool, sweat my daily baptism. Every gate I made, every fence I forged was for my kid's future. Because I had a promise to keep, especially to Caleb. I'd promised he'd study, have opportunities. And in Springfield that was possible. There was even a technical school where boys could learn trades after elementary. When Caleb turned 14, I had a serious talk with him. We were in the workshop, him helping me like always after school. "Son," I said while hammering hot iron, "you thought about what you want to be when you grow up?" He was quiet a moment, then said, "I thought about being a blacksmith like you, Dad." I stopped hammering and looked at him. "Is that really what you want? Or are you saying that because you think I expect it?" "I like the work," he said. But what? Sometimes I dream of being something else. Maybe a teacher. I like studying, learning new things." My heart swelled with pride. "Then you'll be a teacher, son. I'll pay for your studies, even if I have to work double." And that's what I did. I enrolled Caleb in the best high school in Springfield. It was expensive, but I made it work. Took extra jobs, worked Sundays, did whatever to cover the tuition. Because after we decided to stay, I bought a good house for us. Didn't want to rent anymore, wanted something permanent. But it was way more expensive than our old one. So I took a huge bank loan, that's why I worked so hard. Then I improved the house, renovations, added rooms. Built a study room just for the kids, with a big desk and bookshelves. Alice was growing up too, turning into a beautiful young lady like her mom, with those expressive brown eyes. She was studious too. When the time came, I enrolled her in normal school to become a teacher. It was one of the few respectable jobs for women back then. Logan was younger but already showed a knack for numbers. Could do math in his head. Helped his mom with market shopping, always calculating change perfectly. I thought he might be an accountant, work in a bank. The years went by like that, honey, working, raising the kids, living life. The workshop prospered. Springfield grew by leaps and bounds, and with it the demand for my work. I even hired 2 helpers, Jack and Peter, 2 young guys who wanted to learn the trade. With more hands, I could take bigger jobs. Did the whole railing for the new main church, the cemetery gates, the jail bars. My name became known in town as a reliable blacksmith with quality work. We ended up deciding to stay for good. It was good for everyone. I worked like a dog in that workshop. Woke up before sunrise, worked till late at night. Iron was my companion, hammer my tool, sweat my daily baptism. Every gate I made, every fence I forged was for my kid's future. Because I had a promise to keep, especially to Caleb. I'd promised he'd study, have opportunities. And in Springfield that was possible. There was even a technical school where boys could learn trades after elementary. When Caleb turned 14, I had a serious talk with him. We were in the workshop, him helping me like always after school. Son, I said while hammering hot iron, you thought about what you want to be when you grow up? He was quiet a moment, then said, I thought about being a blacksmith like you, Dad. I stopped hammering and looked at him. Is that really what you want? Or are you saying that because you think I expect it? I like the work, he said. But what? Sometimes I dream of being something else. Maybe a teacher. I like studying, learning new things. My heart swelled with pride. Then you'll be a teacher, son. I'll pay for your studies, even if I have to work double. And that's what I did. I enrolled Caleb in the best high school in Springfield. It was expensive, but I made it work. Took extra jobs, worked Sundays, did whatever to cover the tuition. Because after we decided to stay, I bought a good house for us. Didn't want to rent anymore, wanted something permanent. But it was way more expensive than our old one. So I took a huge bank loan, that's why I worked so hard. Then I improved the house, renovations, added rooms. Built a study room just for the kids, with a big desk and bookshelves. Alice was growing up too, turning into a beautiful young lady like her mom, with those expressive brown eyes. She was studious too. When the time came, I enrolled her in normal school to become a teacher. It was one of the few respectable jobs for women back then. Logan was younger but already showed a knack for numbers. Could do math in his head. Helped his mom with market shopping, always calculating change perfectly. I thought he might be an accountant, work in a bank. The years went by like that, honey working, raising the kids, living life. The workshop prospered. Springfield grew by leaps and bounds, and with it the demand for my work. I even hired 2 helpers, Jack and Peter, 2 young guys who wanted to learn the trade. With more hands, I could take bigger jobs. Did the whole railing for the new main church, the cemetery gates, the jail bars. My name became known in town as a reliable blacksmith with quality work. Caleb graduated high school at 17. One of the top students in his class. On graduation day, my chest almost burst with pride. There was my son, all dressed up in his cap and gown, getting his diploma. When they called his name for the honor merit certificate, I saw some surprised looks in the crowd. But I didn't care. My son had earned it through his own hard work. He wanted to keep studying, do the full teacher training program another 3 years, more expenses, but I didn't hesitate. Go study, son. The rest is on me. Alice graduated teacher at 19, got a job at a neighborhood elementary school. It was emotional seeing my daughter leave every morning with her books under her arm, all important, going to teach kids. Soon suitors started showing up. Alice was pretty, educated, from a good family. But I was careful, honey. Wasn't gonna let just anyone near my girl. Had to be a hard-working, respectful man of character. That's when Charles appeared. Son of an established merchant in town, educated young man, worked with his dad in the hardware store. Started hanging around Alice after school, always respectful, asked permission to visit her at home. I made the boy sweat a bit before giving my blessing, but he was a good guy, hardworking, polite, treated Alice with care. Logan, when his time came, went straight to business school. The kid really had a talent for numbers. Learned accounting, bookkeeping, everything money related. At 15 he was already helping organize the workshop accounts. But the big day, honey, the day that marked the victory of all our sacrifices, was when Caleb graduated as a teacher. He was 20. Tall, strong, handsome young man with that wide smile that lit up any room. The ceremony was at the normal school. When they called his name, Caleb Ferreira de Silva, using my last name he'd legally adopted, I got emotional. There was the proof we'd won. My black son, who'd suffered so much prejudice, was graduating teacher, ready to teach and shape young minds and make a difference. After graduation, we had a party at home. Invited closest friends, Caleb's classmates. Naomi made a feast. I bought good wine. It was quite a celebration. Caleb got a job at a public school teaching young kids their first letters. He was a dedicated teacher, patient, loved by his students. Often got little cards from the kids, drawings, simple gifts they brought from home. One beautiful thing he did, he always gave special attention to the black and poor kids in his class. He knew what it was like to feel different, left out. So he made sure to show those kids they could be anything, that skin color or money didn't set limits. Alice married Charles 2 years later. Beautiful wedding at the main church. I walked her down the aisle, all proud. It was strange seeing my little girl in a wedding dress, ready to start her own family. But then I found out something that disappointed me. My daughter was pregnant, got married pregnant, and Naomi knew. She and Charles apologized to me and his parents. Said they were sure they'd get married anyway, that's why they did what they did. I scolded them, but I understood perfectly that urgency to consummate love. They moved into a house 2 streets over. Alice didn't want to go far. Said she needed to stay close to family. And it was good, because soon came the first grandson, a boy named Arthur after me. When I held that baby for the first time, I felt life had come full circle. They ended up having 5 kids total. Alice is a devoted mom, loving wife, present daughter to this day. Logan became an accountant and went to work at the Bank of America. Serious, competent guy, climbed the career ladder fast. Also married a girl named Helen, from a traditional Springfield family. They had 3 kids, all beautiful and healthy. But guess who took longest to marry? Caleb. But when he met Teresa, everything changed. Teresa was a teacher too, light-skinned mixed race, daughter of a Portuguese dad and black mom. Smart, cultured, beautiful woman. They met at a teachers' meeting and it was love at first sight. When Caleb brought her home the first time, I saw huge joy on Naomi's face. Finally, our oldest son had found someone. Teresa was charming, could talk about anything, had her own opinions, modern for the time. They married on a spring Saturday, simple but beautiful ceremony. Caleb was radiant at 29. Teresa was stunning. Watching them at the altar, I thought about the whole journey to get there. They had 2 kids. First, a boy named Andrew, after my brother who died as a child. When Caleb told me the name, I cried like a baby. The second was a girl, Lucia, born with her grandma's green eyes, beautiful like a doll. As years went by, honey, life settled in. The workshop kept strong. Now with Jack pretty much running daily operations while I just supervised. I was getting old, back hurt, and especially my right shoulder, always aching. Hands weren't as steady anymore in Naomi and I aged together slowly, with dignity. She was still beautiful in my eyes, even with white hair and face wrinkles. We celebrated 55 years married last year. Feels like yesterday she stopped in front of my workshop with little Caleb in her arms. Today, at 78, I look back and see every sacrifice, every hardship, every moment of doubt was worth it. We built a beautiful family, raised good kids, educated, hardworking, left a legacy of love and overcoming. Ah, but there's one thing you're probably wondering, honey. What about Caleb's real dad, that traveling salesman? Did he ever disappear for good? Yep, vanished. Never showed his face, the bastard. Not even to see if his son was alive or dead. Imagine how many kids he left scattered around. But Caleb did ask, you know? Especially when he was older, around 14, 15. Once we were alone in the workshop, him helping hold a piece while I welded. And he just asked, Dad, you think my real dad is still alive? I stopped work right then. Looked at that young man almost as tall as me and answered honestly, I don't know, son, but your real dad is me. The other guy was just the one who made you. But sometimes I think about him, he admitted, kinda embarrassed. Wonder what he's like, where he is, if he has other kids. It's natural to wonder, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. But that man made a choice, Caleb. He chose to leave, chose not to know you. He was quiet, thinking. Then asked, what if he shows up one day? If he does, he'll have to talk to me first, and by then you'll be a grown man. You can decide if you want to meet him. But one thing I guarantee, no one will ever take you from me. You're my son before God and man. Naomi suffered with it too, you know? Once Caleb asked her if his dad was handsome, if he looked like him. She was uncomfortable but answered, "Yes, son. You got his good looks." There was a time when Caleb was about 16 that he got kinda obsessed with finding his biological dad. Found out the guy's name was James Santos, worked for a pharmaceutical company in the capital. Wanted to go look for him, wanted answers. That's when I had to be firmer. Sat him down and said, "Son, you can look for this man if you want, but think hard, he knows you exist. Your mom never hid the pregnancy. If he wanted to know you, he'd have shown up by now. You really want to knock on the door of someone who didn't want you?" Truth is, I said it without knowing for sure. Maybe the guy was even dead. Road work was dangerous. But if that was true, Caleb might think that's why he never came. Truth is, I never knew. All I know is Caleb thought about it for days, weeks, until one day he told me he'd given up. "You're right, Dad. Someone who didn't want me doesn't deserve to know me." But you know when it really clicked for him? On his wedding day with Teresa, when we were getting ready, just us two in the room, he hugged me and said, "Dad, today I understand what you did for me. I'm marrying the woman I love, and I know I'll be there for every child that comes. The man who abandoned me lost all that. Lost watching me grow, study, graduate. He lost the right to be called Dad. You didn't, you won it all because you chose to stay." I cried like a baby that day, honey. It was the recognition I'd always waited for. The house we live in today is big, comfortable. Has a garden Naomi tends with love. Fruit trees the grandkids love climbing. Space for the whole family to gather on Sundays and holidays. On the walls are photos of our whole journey, the wedding, kids being born, graduations, grandkids arriving. Every photo tells part of our story, proof we overcame every obstacle life threw at us. And all this, of course, with the help of our Lord Jesus. Without him I'm nothing. That's how my story ends, honey, not with sadness, but gratitude. Gratitude for living, for loving, for building something that will last way beyond me. And if God allows, from heaven I'll keep watching over them all, my family, my treasure, my life. And for you ladies who listen to this whole story, we have wonderful news. After so many requests about menopause doubts, we created a real treasure, the ebook Menopause, the complete guide, 5 supplements you won't regret trying. Honey, we made this guide to help every woman go through this phase with dignity and quality of life. You'll understand everything about menopause clearly, learn the 5 essential supplements that really make a difference, with tested protocols, honest explanations about hormone replacement, and tips for low libido. We included a practical guide on where to buy each item, what needs a prescription and what doesn't. And special bonuses, formula to keep hair from going gray and a powerful tip to get rid of melasma. This guide pairs perfectly with our other treasure, Grandma's Teas for all ailments, with special recipes that also help during menopause. Imagine having both these treasures right in your hand. To check out these little books made with so much love, click the link pinned in the first comment below this video. Attention, these books are digital, they won't arrive by mail. God bless you and your family.